thought the one was silent.
What?
I thought the one was supposed to be silent. Yeah, you suck.
Anyways.
welcome back to Nain Shorts. Another edition of training and the crazy crap that we think about here in the Belated Mind, because I'm not sure where it comes from, but it feels right. It feels natural, and hopefully it helps you out. For those of you who watch on a regular basis, thank you very, very much. For those of you who do not start, there's about 70-something episodes prior to this one that will kind of stir your mind, make you ask questions that you may have forgotten to ask, or it's been a while. You just may have overlooked. And possibly they help you gain more insight into yourself. Because ultimately, folks, that's what this is about. It's about the individual, and in this particular case, me as the individual, in my journey in the martial arts. Which there's a lot to be said about that, and everybody has their own stories on the matter and the results that have come because of it. But here I am, training as often as I possibly can and trying to push the boundaries of my own understanding of what's going on. Now, recently we started having classes on a more regular basis, and we just had one Sunday. And it was fun. It was fun watching the students just come up with their own, let's say, even techniques. Because what is a technique? It's a series of events. One thing leads to another, leads to another. Those who are really good at it, they can flow in and out of their technique easily. They can get to it even when the initial contact isn't given. Say the technique is off a punch. They don't receive that punch, but they can still make that technique work. And I started thinking about that because of this class we had, which was on creativity. Now, what do the two have in common? Well, not just the creativity of being able to use a set pattern in different ways, but the set pattern itself. Now, this is just my theory, my hypothesis, something that I kind of thought of in reference to how true it is. I don't really know, because that's a lot of research that I don't have any intention of doing. But for the established arts, and for those of you who know the history of your particular arts, can you trace a particular technique, even a kata or a pinyon, back to its creator? The person who made it, who put it together initially. Now, were they trying to create something for the art itself, or were they in a fight or some sort of physical altercation and this is what came out? It's just somehow they did 3 or 4 different moves and it worked. And after the fact, they realized, oh wow, that actually worked a lot better than I thought it was. Let me try to remember what it was. And then they spent the rest of their lives trying to figure out what they did and turn it into something teachable. And that's where the technique comes from. That's where those older techniques are from. Somebody used them, somebody made them work at one point or another early on in the early stages of whatever art it is that you're referencing. And it was so impactful that it became the norm. Now it's a set pattern, they're movements, but originally it was on somebody's creativity that it was born from. They figured something out, they put it together, and now it became the basic standard of whatever it is that you do. So the class was really focused on the idea of how do we become the creators? How do we take all these things that we know how to do, these very basic movements, how do we take that and develop the understanding further within ourselves to be able to just use them on the fly? I don't know if there's one right answer, and I'm not trying to tell you that the answer we came up with is the right one, but it's something that worked for us. And that was getting the students to really understand where they're putting their energy in everything that's moving. Now, Simple idea, and I know other people have said it too. You know, physics, energy in one direction, you can only resist energy in one direction. You can only really give energy in one direction. And when we're talking about strikes and movements and contact and all that, it's easy to understand that energy, that strength, tension, the relaxation, all those differences, the nuances. But what about the energy that we're using just standing there? What about the energy that it takes to take a step? Or when we're startled and we tense up and our muscles contract? That energy is also there as you're fighting, as you're moving in front of you. So being able to understand, one, the energy coming towards you, but also how tense, how relaxed, how mobile or stiff you are at any given point, all of a sudden starts giving you different options. Now, muscle memory, which we all know isn't actually muscle memory, it's just something that you practice the most so it comes out quicker because of neural patterns in your brain, because you do it a lot, so it just happens that way, it becomes natural. But is it only natural in one specific scenario? Can those movements then be utilized in something that you weren't expecting? When you don't know that they're throwing a right punch or a kick or they're trying to grapple, because you're in a state of chaos, which is what a fight usually is. You don't know what the person is capable of. You don't know what they know or don't, how good or bad they are, or what it is they might know. You just know, okay, this is not a situation I want to be in. You did everything you could to get out of it, and now all of a sudden you have to get physical, you have to do something or hurt them or whatever the case may be, because there's no one answer to any of that. Every situation is fluid, every situation is different, and there's no way to train for every possible scenario. Doesn't mean we shouldn't, because that is a lot of fun to do scenario training, but how do we keep ourselves both physically and mentally malleable enough to be able to change on the fly, to be able to adapt to the changes that you have no control over? And that's what we played with this particular class. We played with the idea of not using force, not for the sake of learning a soft touch or because that's where the art is going, but literally to understand both the energy that is being received, but also the energy that you're using in that process. Are you moving with it? Are you trying to push and be stiff about it? And what we found was that as the students were very specific about what they were doing, say this simple parry, as they were putting pressure to push in one specific direction, it was a lot harder for the students to adapt to the changes and come up with different possibilities for that scenario. But the moment that they stopped fighting what was coming at them and moved in what I can only describe as a soft touch, a soft brush, all of a sudden they felt more relaxed and more at ease, and they were coming up with some really cool combinations, stuff that we hadn't seen them do before. But because they were given the freedom to not fight themselves, which sounds kind of funny, but essentially that's what we do. The moment we tense up, we have to release all that in order to move on to something else. That takes time. That energy has to be first released and then moved in a different direction. But in the Bladed Mind, we're all about fluidity, not just the physical movements, but the fluidity of ideas and concepts. And then how does the individual, in this case me, really take them? Because I started realizing that in that sensitivity that we were playing with, there is a lot that happens on your end that oftentimes we're not aware of. It took me a couple of days to even realize that that was going on during that class, and now I'm hashing it out in front of you guys and putting it on here because I think it's important and something that shouldn't be totally overlooked. One of the reasons why my own personal sensitivity is becoming more and more apparent is because I do uki for a lot of people. And getting thrown and learning how to roll softer on the ground and how to land softer, it takes a degree of control. Because I'm not trying to break the ground. I couldn't. The concrete, the floor, whatever the mats, I'm not going to break through that. I'm not going to crush them. I'm not going to punch through all that. With my body, I have to find a way to minimize the impact that I get from falling down. But isn't that also very similar to minimizing the impact we receive from a punch or a kick? We often talk about in martial arts that when you stiffen up and resist, you can get hurt more when it comes to locks and breaks, but when it comes to punches and kicks, if you learn how to breathe out and kind of stiffen up certain parts of your body, then you're a little more resistant to that impact. But it requires both. You can't be stiff all the time. You can't be tightening up all your muscles every single moment of that fight because it slows you down. You waste energy. But at the same time, you can't be loosey-goosey either and then just flop about. Some martial arts focus solely on that. Others focus more on the harder aspect of it. And you hear it all the time, hard versus soft styles. But I don't think it's much of a difference of style as it is just a difference of mentality and what it is you focus on. Maybe what your body is more easily capable of doing. So that's what you stick with. But ultimately, the body can do both. So why not explore both and deepen your understanding of when and where? Because that will open up the doors to so many other possibilities to insert things that you've never maybe used before, simply because you find yourself in a situation where it feels right. It feels right to do, and it's more likely that your body is just simply going to do it. You may not have practiced it that way. It may not have come up in any sort of technique that you've done in the past. But in that moment, in that one specific moment that may never happen again, it was the right thing to do, and both your mind and body were on the same page. Imagine if we can fight like that all the time. And I'm not saying it's possible, but it's definitely something to try to aspire to. I definitely am. That's why I do these videos. That's why I have these conversations, because I want to get to a point where I can just go. Well, folks, thank you very much for joining me. Stay on the lookout for Kali Conversations. Maybe my co-host is well enough in the upcoming week to possibly start doing that again. So thumbs and cross fingers and everything else, because we'd like to get this thing rolling once again. But for those of you who are watching Nain Short, thank you very much. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Share with friends, someone that you think might find this information, or maybe it's not even information, really. It's more just a conversation, an idea that some crazy Mexican had and is now sharing with the rest of you. So thank you for joining me on Nain Shorts. Until the next one, 3, 2, 1, cut!